Hey everybody, welcome to the latest episode of The Rock Experience with Mike Brunn. On this episode, I'm joined by Great White guitarist Mark Kendall, and he will talk all about what's in store for Great White this year, as well as giving us some thoughts and insights on their wonderful career. I think you guys are going to really love this episode, so let's jump in and let's get started. Awesome, awesome. I just want to thank you, Mark, for doing this. I really appreciate it. I guess before we even jump into the music, I'll just ask you, the last year has been rough on everybody. How are you and
Yeah,
your loved ones and everybody in the band doing?
everybody's healthy and doing good. We're looking forward to getting back out there. That's for sure.
Without a
So we're
doubt.
excited about playing shows and stuff.
Yeah, no, that's a perfect segue, right? So you have a few shows coming up, I guess, starting, it sounds like
Yeah,
in like the early June time period across Nevada, Colorado, some of the other
yeah,
states. You must be excited to finally be hitting the road again.
yeah. April 24th is our first show back, so
Oh,
that's
okay.
just next week. So yeah, it's exciting. I play my guitar every day, but playing on stage and playing at home are you know two different deals.
Without a
So
doubt.
it's exciting.
Awesome. Now, I know last year you guys were fortunate. You were able to do a handful of shows, if I'm not mistaken, last year, right?
Yeah.
And I think one
hmm
of them, if I'm not mistaken, was in Kentucky, a driving concert. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah,
How was that
yeah, it was
experience for the
actually
band?
people were in their cars or outside of their cars, and we had these giant, big screen, you know, LED kind of, so people could see the band far away. Most of the people sat outside of their cars, like you do when you're going to the drive-in.
Hmm.
Back in the day, way back, you used to have the drive-ins, and so it was different, but that was it felt normal apart from the cars, but the people were up against the stage, and and that's when the pandemic was going pretty strong. There was a lot of fear out there and whatnot,
Sure.
and so it was kind of nice that they figured out how to do it safe, and where people felt comfortable and just listening to music.
Yeah, I was fortunate. I went to a driving concert in November, I think it was, for the band Kicks. And as a
Oh
fan,
yeah.
yeah, it was a great experience to be able to still see a concert, like you said, in a safe environment. We were outside
Yeah.
our cars, but distance. So the new shows coming up, are they, I'll say, standard shows? Are they drive-ins? You know what they're like?
I really don't know how they're going to deal with making it safe. I heard they might not sell the whole show, kind
Sure.
of like they're doing in baseball, like not filling the whole stadiums yet. They're
Yep.
just, selling a third or whatever. I think they're probably going to do something like that. I'm not sure how they're dealing with the outdoor shows, probably, or compared to indoors, perhaps masks and just we're pretty much educated now on how to be safe going to the store and whatnot, so
Yeah.
it's not much different than that. So I'm sure there's enough information out there to where people can go listen to music and you know shop at the market, and
Right.
you know what I mean. So
Yep. Yep, absolutely. Now, during this last year, when there's been a lot of downtime, probably much more than you're used to in the last 30, 40 years,
uh,
right? Have you
uh,
used any of this time to write new material? Is there any plans to put out any new music?
yeah, I've actually been up north twice, putting stuff on tape. We've been kind of doing it through emails, MP3s, you know, kind of just in the idea stages, not like finishing songs, because we usually don't do that until we go play together.
Sure.
But we've been getting ahead of the game. I've been sending the singer music, and he's coming back with full songs and stuff. So, but they might get arranged slightly different later, but at
Sure.
least as far as getting a good idea down.
Right.
So yeah, we've been writing pretty much like crazy. I got so much stuff on. I like back in the day, the way I've always done it is I used to have micro cassettes.
I remember
The
them.
only
Yeah.
difference now is I use my phone because it has the memory recording,
Sure.
and it's always around me. So if I have an idea, I can get it down right away with my phone. So as simple as that sounds, it works pretty good.
That's awesome. Now you mentioned you sent it to the singer. Is that still Mitch? Is he still in the
Yeah,
band singing?
yeah. So I sent him music, and he's able. I don't even send any vocal ideas, melodies, or anything, and he's been coming back with like full songs, and I've been pretty happy with it.
Sure.
He hears things slightly different than me, and I like it because it's usually better. So that's always good. Yeah. So we've just been working that way. You know, Shortly down the road, we'll all get into a room and hash things out and get some out there for the fans, something new.
Sounds exciting, without a doubt. And this would be the first new album with Mitch Malloy on vocals.
Yeah, yeah, it'll be
Awesome.
the first one with him on it, and we're super excited about it because the stuff we've been coming up with, like you were talking about earlier, we haven't been home this long for a long time,
Right.
so we've had plenty. We got no excuses to not come up with something good. In fact, this is probably the longest I've ever been home. Is since I've held the guitar.
Wow.
We've always been on the road. Literally since 1982, we haven't been home. I know for a fact not this long.
Right.
So, but it's been fun, to hang out with my family, and I got a little grandson and stuff, so I've been
Nice.
able to play with him, and of course, like I've said before, I wish it was under different conditions,
Of
but
course.
it's been kind of nice, to
Yep.
to you know um, learn get to know my family.
Of course. Is there ever a time in the last year where you say, hey, you know what? I'm not 20 anymore. I've had an amazing career. I'm going to just stay home and hang with the family and hang with the grandkids. Or are you like, that's it? I can't wait to get back on the road.
Well, it was nice for a while, but I'm excited because you know since I was 17 years old, I mean, it's been my life, and I really don't, apart from a couple hobbies that I have, you know it's what I do, and when I'm away from it for a minute, it's okay. But if I'm away from my guitar too long and the stage, it makes me go crazy. I need to get out there and play.
Right,
You
right,
know,
right.
it's so fun.
Without a doubt. So, you just mentioned how, it's been since like 1982, you're on the road, right? I think Great White put out their
Yeah,
first EP, your first EP, 1983. Did you ever think you'd be
yeah.
looking at almost 40 years later that you'd still be doing this?
No way, because like our heroes, like Zeppelin, and stuff, bands like that had like 7-year careers, and here we are 40 years later. Um, I don't really have an answer to that, apart from we didn't put out like our first album and have it sell like 40 million and then kind of disappear. We always sell a million or two, and then the next one. And I don't know, we keep making new music, and because it kind of helps our energy, we get real excited when we have something new,
Mhm.
and then we can't wait to hear what the fans think of it. And I guess that's why we're still here, and the fans are still here, which kind of keeps us coming back, because they're always out in front of the stage, pumping their fist, going, yeah, right on, and
Absolutely.
singing our songs too, which is just a beautiful thing.
Without a doubt. Now, for those who are watching who maybe don't know, all the members in the band, right? We talked about Mitch, but a lot of the band members are actually, I'll say, the classic band members from the '80s. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, Audie and Michael. I
Mhm.
mean, the drummer and keyboard guitar player have been in the band since '85.
Yep.
Um, so the originals were only in the band a couple of years,
Sure.
just for our first EP, and it was a different band. It was just a trio with the lead singer. It was guitar, bass, drums, and singer.
Yep.
You know, and then we added the keyboards and then Rock Me. We kind of started playing according to our influences around the time when Rock Me came out.
Sure.
The manager told me he'd hear me kind of playing around and it sounded like Alvin Lee and Johnny Winter, and he's going, "You need to be doing that."
Right.
And I go, "Okay." Um, so that's it.
Yeah. You
Yeah, it
mentioned the
just
first.
keeps rolling.
Yeah, you mentioned the first album. If you ever go back and listen to that, does it sound like a totally different band to you? Right? I mean, it's more of what I'll call a traditional hard rock album. Whether it's songs like "On
Yeah,
Your Knees" or "Out of the Night." They're just classic, great hard rock songs. Does it feel like a
yeah.
different band to you when you listen to that?
Well, yeah, and part of that reason is, we used to work at my singer's dad's factory, and we used to listen to Judas Priest and early Scorpions on the way to work.
Right.
So we're kids and we're just thinking, let's try to be like that. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's like, forget all our influences and everything. Let's just try to be like Judas Priest and the Scorpion. Even though it didn't come out that way, it's what we were actually trying to be, something, other than what we are,
Right.
on that first album. It turned out fine. Um, it's just a case where my manager and actually the keyboard player both said, play from the heart, play what you feel, play from your influences, you know don't try to be something.
Sure.
And so I go, oh, and it really opened my horizons. I started going like, I'm totally free to do whatever I want.
Right. Right.
And then it started sounding like, the people that made me want to play, like, the Carlos Santanas and Johnny Winters and Alvin Lee and all the my old Clapton and my heroes.
Hmm.
And, so, you know, I naturally became, and what the funny thing about it is, when we tried to be like Judas Priest and the Scorpions on our first album, it wasn't well accepted. And then
Right.
as soon as we became honest with our music and honest with ourselves, it went huge.
Right.
So
Right.
there's got to be something to say about that.
Without a
It-
doubt. Now,
be true to your music.
right. Now, to me, though, on those early albums, you always did have, and I know ultimately you had a huge hit with a cover tune, Once Bitten, Twice Shy. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but you had some great covers of what I'm assuming are some of your influences, whether it was Substitute, Give Me Some Lovin', of
Mm.
course, Face the Day, right? So you also had some
Yeah,
great covers on those early albums, which I'm assuming was
yeah,
drawn off your influences as well, right?
yeah. Actually, Alan, our manager Alan Niven used to come to us with songs. A lot of them we never heard. Like, I never heard "Substitute" before.
Hmm.
I was familiar with the Who, but just happened to not ever hear that song. He
Okay.
wanted us to kind of do it our own way or whatever, so we did that on the first album. And "Face the Day" was another thing. We had never heard of that band before, so we kind of made that song our own. And so we kind of always did covers that were brought to us. We never went out. Usually the trick is, you know, you find a song that was already a hit and then you do it your way.
Right.
We always found songs that weren't big hits
Right.
and did it our own way. So it's kind of funny the way, like "Once Bitten, Twice Shy" was never a hit
Right.
until we did it. So, but what they say is if you find a hit and do it your own way, you're halfway home because the song was already a hit before.
Right.
And so you probably won't mess it up if you do it your way,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
and then yeah, so it's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, when I hear a song like Face the Day, that to me is a Great White song. And that's no knock on the original. The original is great as
Right,
well. But to
right,
me, you guys have your own little twist on that. And it's just to me a classic Great White song.
yeah. And the funny part is, like I was just saying earlier, that we really didn't have success on our first album, so we were kind of dropped from the label. They
Right.
didn't want to develop us or do all the things they did back then. So we had to go a whole year with no record deal, and we made that record for $15,000 of borrowed money, and Face the Day became a marginal hit, believe it or
Right.
not,
Yep.
on KLOS, and they played it in Arizona, Texas. So it wasn't a monster hit, but enough to get the attention of a second chance for us.
Without a doubt.
So
Now, well,
yeah.
you guys were based out in Los Angeles, and I've always found this interesting. You hear about that Los Angeles scene, and you hear about the Motley Crues, and you hear Van Halen, and you
Mm.
hear Rat. I don't necessarily hear about Great White in the club area of Los Angeles. Were you guys playing those, the Whiskey and all those classic clubs at that
Oh
time?
yeah, yeah, yeah. We played on the weekends. We were playing either the Troubadour,
Okay.
Whiskey, or a club called the Starwood.
Okay. Yep.
And but we weren't that a big local band. We
Right.
weren't as big as a lot of the other local bands. So we didn't figure to make it, on paper as far as the LA scene. What like if you put the top 30 bands, we'd probably be number 33.
Okay.
You
Right.
know what I mean? It's like the 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 bands that were expected to make it didn't,
Mhm.
and the unsuspecting ones kind of got in there. And
Right.
it's a lot of luck, a lot of stars lining up and stuff. And we played so often that it was like insane. I
Right.
mean, we didn't just play on the weekends, we played all during the week. We played every night. And I was working jobs. I was like painting AM PM signs or numbers
Hmm.
on curbs, or
Okay.
you know
Right.
working in potato chip factories.
Oh, wow.
So I was working in the daytime and then playing 5 sets a night, or playing a showcase in Hollywood of nothing but original music.
Oh, wow.
So there was a lot of years of grinding. I know that people like to call you an overnight success, but I gotta
Oh,
tell you, man, there was a lot of grinding it out.
right. Now, and during that grind out period, wasn't
Yeah,
there a short time where you actually even had a female lead singer in the band?
yeah,
Right. So how
yeah.
was that
And
for you?
it was actually, she was really good.
Right.
She kind of looked like a rough Pat Benatar,
Okay. Mhm.
cute, and had some pipes, delivered very powerfully.
Mhm.
And George Lynch, who ended up to be in Dokken later, stole her out of my band.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so she ended up going with him and singing in his band. And then I got another singer that was kind of like, I've told the story before, but he was like Rob Halford,
Okay.
sang Judas Priest perfect, and sang our originals and stuff. And yeah, so had a few. John Bush from what band was he
Oh,
in?
was that Almond Saint?
Yeah, Armored Saint.
Yep.
Yeah, he auditioned. He was one of the guys. So we auditioned a lot of people and went through a few singers.
Right. Right.
Guys came with ad. That would. I remember one guy came in. He was from an ad. And he listened to a demo we made, and he goes, I remember the dude saying, that stuff's fun, but it just doesn't go anywhere.
No. Wow. Okay. Well, he was wrong.
You think back to those type things, the egos, and people that ain't never been there, ain't never done that, and all that, and they're geniuses. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right. Of
It's
course.
just funny. It's
Right.
just
Right.
funny.
Well, you mentioned before we were talking about some of the covers. So how did the band ultimately end up covering Once Bitten, Twice Shy, which ended up being a huge hit for you guys?
Yeah, another story that I've told before, but it's actually kind of a good one. Our manager managed Guns N' Roses as
Yep.
well as us, and we had an album called Once Bitten, so we felt like the obvious follow-up would be Twice Shy.
Sure.
Well, the guitar player, not Slash, but Izzy
Is he?
Stradlin, the
Yep.
other guitar player from Guns N' Roses, came to Alan, our manager, with that song,
Okay.
um, and said, "You guys should do this tune. It'd be so cool because you have that album Once Bitten, this is Twice Shy, and now you do Once Bitten, Twice Shy. It'd just be a fun thing to do." Well, Alan, he presented it just to Alan. We hadn't heard anything about this till later.
Hmm.
Alan loved the lyrics. He just thought the lyrics were awesome because it was a song about being on the road with your Les Paul, and you
Right.
know, just the coolest lyrics ever. So he presented it to us, and we thought it was cool. We go, yeah, we'll do this song. We changed it a little bit, the chorus and stuff, and we'd already had a relationship with Ian Hunter that weren't related to us doing the song at all.
Okay.
Our first sound man on the Judas Priest tour was friends with Ian Hunter. So we went by Ian Hunter's house with a truck and borrowed the drum riser out of his backyard.
Oh.
And we used that drum riser on the Judas Priest tour. And then when we played in New York one time, he came on our bus and just went to our gig for whatever reason because he
Sure.
was friends with the sound man. So we had this relationship with Ian Hunter, but the funny part is we had nothing to do with us doing that song, and so we just thought it would be an album track as far as the band goes.
Sure.
We just thought cool song to put on the album. But the record company, when it was all said and done, the record was done. They came in and listened. When they heard that song, they just wigged out and started jumping all over the room.
Hmm.
So we go, oh, okay. I guess we know what song they want, and
Right.
we we didn't hate the idea, but we also felt like, well, at least we have these other tunes to fall back on.
Right.
We had no idea it would just go crazy and everybody would love it.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's it.
Oh, without a
Funny.
doubt. So you mentioned Guns N' Roses before, right? So I remember growing up a teenager in the 80s. It was the big MTV concert was Great White and Guns N' Roses, which I think was shown on separate nights, but you guys performed the same night at the Ritz there in New York City. What do you remember, if anything,
Yeah.
about that show that evening?
Um, well, first of all, our manager came to us and asked us to open for them, and they had just barely gone gold,
Sure.
and we were like double platinum. We were on tour with Whitesnake. This was a day off, and he just said the buzz in New York is so outrageous for these guys. It'd just be cool if you guys open. We had no problem with it.
Hmm.
And the other thing I remember is both bands having a great night. I was
Indeed.
I was sick, but I just had a really bad fever. It was like 103. I'll
Oh,
never
boy.
forget. 103. So I figured I better have 6 Heinekens instead of 4 that night because we cured everything with beer back
Of
then.
course.
So I remember it was real hot at the gig, but we had a good show. Crowd was just real into it. The MTV cameras were there and everything. So kind of a legendary show, really.
Hmm.
Um, Guns were just awesome that night. That I loved them because you know they're very matter of fact. They're really confident, but they're not too polished.
Right.
They just kind of go out there, gang, gang, and talk to the crowd. And I don't know. They're just they were just really cool. Um, so that it was great to be a part of that show and everything, and just see what happened. See them flourish and sell trillions of records and everything. Yeah, it's just crazy.
To me, that performance, both you guys and Guns N' Roses, that's the definitive live MTV concert from the 80s to me. And I still watch that on a regular basis. It's just, to me, it was an awesome night of music.
Yeah, it's
So,
on YouTube, huh?
yes, you
I've
can find.
seen.
Yeah.
So every once in a while, a song pops into my news feed up from
Right,
YouTube.
right.
It's that show, man. That was
Right.
like so long ago.
It was. So now sticking with MTV again for another moment, Great White was pretty much, I think, the first rock band to do an MTV Unplugged segment also, right? So they just started doing the MTV
Yeah.
Unplugged. They had done a couple of other artists, but none were the hard rock bands. I think it was you and
Right.
Damn Yankees, I think, were on the same episode. What do you remember about the MTV Unplugged thing?
Well, it was, we heard about it, and they offered for they, invited us to do it. And that same day, Don Henley did his show, Damn Yankees and Us.
Wow.
I didn't remember them releasing it together. I think they did 1 week us, 1 week.
You could be right. My memory could be off. It's 30 years ago.
But we all recorded the same day.
Okay.
And, with a small crowd there. And I remember that my manager called me the night before and told me to learn this Zeppelin song, Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You.
Right.
So I learned that song the night before, and we only went over it like in the dressing room and at sound check.
Wow.
So I was a little nervous about doing it because it was a very long arrangement, a lot to remember.
Sure.
But I'd heard it on the radio a lot over the years, and the singer knew it perfect, so I kind of used him for my guide. Yeah. A couple times I kind of go off to play another part and get my way back and go, oh, I don't go yet.
Right, right.
But it turned out fine, and they ended up releasing that song.
Yep.
But it turned out okay, and so that was actually fun to present our music with acoustic guitars.
Right.
Right. It was kind of fun because we'd never done that before. So I thought it was a good idea what they did with the MTV with the Unplugged.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, so as a guitar player, then, if you have a preference, do you like that small, intimate acoustic setting? You rather be playing in a club, electric guitar? What's your preference?
Well, I like playing electric. And then if we have an acoustic song in the set, do that. Mm-hmm. But for a one-off, just for something new, I thought it was a good idea.
Sure.
But I prefer, to plug in. Like Ted Nugent said, he goes, yeah, some guy gassed me one time and tried to make me play acoustic.
Oh, that's very funny. And that's the answer I would have expected you to give me. So, when you look back on the 80s, we were just talking about these two concerts that were on MTV. We know that the video Rock Me was very big on MTV, Save Your Love, right? How instrumental do you think was MTV to the band's success in the 80s?
Well, it was for all the bands because it was like an expensive commercial. I mean, people saw you all the time, and, we were all over the radio. So it was just a really good time for the whole genre. I remember we were at a show and MTV came to this big show we did at some amphitheater. I remember it was I think Pacific Amphitheater.
Okay.
And we were number one. And MTV said we're number one on MTV. Mm-hmm. That was with Once Bitten, Twice Shy.
Right.
Obviously, I don't think it's totally judged because you made this great video. I just think if the song's way up in the charts, it's getting played more than everything else, then they just happen to say, oh, you're number one. It's not because that video is better than, so-and-so's video. And so, but it was still fun because, you can, say hi to your mom on camera or whatever. You know what I mean? Right. It's like you can share it with the family. So that's always a good thing.
I've seen some publications where they list some of the like top 10, top 20 from that decade. And they'll say like top 15 hair metal songs, and they'll have Once Bitten, Twice Shy in there. Does it bother you to be labeled in with the hair metal category? Because to me, you guys really weren't hair metal.
Um, it doesn't bother me. I just think that that was, you know, it just doesn't really dictate to our music very
Agreed.
much. It's more of the, uh, you know, the fashion of the time.
Yep.
Just like the '60s had their fashion, the '90s kind of had their deal. Um, you know, the '70s. I mean, you know, the '60s was like beads, bell bottoms, peace,
Right.
love. You
Mhm.
know, so I've never heard it called beads rock or
Right.
whatever,
Or bell bottom
or you
rock.
know, hippie rock. You
Right.
know, um, it's just music. It just, you know, I under kind of stand why they said that, because a lot of us look the same. We're all using Aquanet, and you know, the same guys making everybody's clothes and everything. So the the fashion, I guess it's kind of an easy escape for a journalist just to call the whole decade hair metal.
Agreed. Hmm.
But if they looked into our music a little deeper, I think, you know, I told journalists before, my hair has never written a song, you know,
Very true.
so which is absolutely true. The reason I play the way I do is from all the people that made me want to play, you know, the
Right.
Carlos Santanas of the world,
Right.
and you know, Hendrix, Clapton, all the guys, you know, the Stones. Um, and it had nothing to do with their hair either. You know what I mean?
That's true.
So it, it doesn't bother me. I just think, like I said, if they listen to our music closer, they might be able to get away from our hair a little bit.
Without a doubt.
Be easier today too.
Tell me about it. I'm right there with you.
The funny thing is, it's like I was telling this guy, I go, if we wore golf shirts and I had a shaved head my entire career, our music would be exactly the same.
That is
You know,
very
there would
true.
be nothing different about the music.
That is very true.
So, what
You
would
know,
you call that?
that's very true. I don't know if
Golf
you
shirt rock.
golf shirt rock, exactly. I don't know if you noticed this week was actually the 32nd anniversary release of the Twice Shy album, right? Which you were mentioning before. I remember
Yeah.
seeing the bands on tour that year with Tesla and Badlands, which to me
Oh,
was, for me, the first time I remembered what I'll call a triple bill. Of course, there
mhm.
were in the past, there were festivals with multiple bands, but I didn't remember ever going to a concert with three bands on the bill like that. And to me, that was, as
Yeah.
a fan, such a great tour. What do you remember about that tour?
Yeah. Well, it was wonderful. When in '84, when we were on the Judas Priest tour,
Yeah.
every day off almost, and we were playing 3 day off, 2 day off, 3 day off. You know, we went on and on like that for an arena tour for like 6 months.
Sure.
But we would play clubs on the days off. And one
Mhm.
time we were up north in Sacramento and played a club. The opening band was a band called City Kid,
Okay.
and the singer got my attention. I'm going, man, that singer. I go, if these guys ever did originals, that guitar player is pretty badass too.
Hmm.
And 3 years later, I find out that became Tesla,
Yep.
and we co-headlined and did a tour with them. I just thought that was wonderful. That, you know, they worked hard, they made, you know, wrote music, and got a record deal and everything, and we toured with them. And then we had Badlands with Jakey Lee, with great
Yep.
guitar, but really nice guy, my
Yep.
good buddy. Um, yeah, and we were able to, you know, sell shows out. And that's the funny thing about the '90s. What I noticed is every time they would do arena tours, there was like 7 bands on the
Right.
bill.
It became the norm
You
in the
know,
90s. When you did it,
but on their own, each band,
right.
they were selling millions of records. That's what kind of I couldn't figure that out,
Right.
because, you know, we've gone on tours where, like Judas Priest, for example, sold out almost every single arena every night, and we were the only opening act.
Right.
It was just us and them only.
Yep.
You know, we didn't need like 8 bands to sell.
Right.
You know, uh, and I'm not dissing on the '90s. I just, because they sold so many records. There's so many great bands, Alice in Chains. It goes on and on. But I just thought it was weird that I see some of these bands, and there's like some of these bills, and there was so many bands on the bill. I'm going, God, what time does the first band play? Like 3 in the afternoon.
Right.
Because a lot of times they're arena shows.
Sure.
So I don't know the answer to that, but yeah, the Tesla tour, that was a wonderful time. Um, really successful, and we were out for. I remember that tour being forever, like 10 months or something.
Right.
It was nuts. How there wasn't anywhere we didn't play. I mean, it was like crazy. And I remember we took a break on that tour.
Okay.
And our manager wouldn't let us go home. He goes, I don't want to break the momentum. So he sent us to the Bahamas for 5 days.
Okay. Well, that could be worse than that, right? That could be a lot worse.
Let the party continue.
Right.
Oh,
man.
So that was crazy.
Yeah. So you mentioned grunge before. Obviously grunge came in, and a lot of the bands from the 80s, unfortunately, got impacted a lot. You were touring with, I think it was Kiss in 1992 on their Revenge tour, and the arenas were like half filled, if that, right? What do you remember about that whole grunge? Yeah, some nights, right? So, what do you remember about that tour and the grunge scene starting, and all of that?
The grunge scene, when I first saw Nirvana, I just go, these guys are amazing. I loved it. I thought they were completely cool because they had so much melody in their music, and it was just like the I don't care thing, and it was just the drummer was killer, and it was refreshing to look at that. And then the bands that came after that, the Alice in Chains, I remember loving those dudes. So I love the music, and I think the 80s was kind of ready to go. Toward the end, it was just so watered down. It's like the songs were so predictable. It's like I could tell you what the lyrics going to be in advance.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It's like the chorus is coming. I know what he's going to say.
Right.
So it was a little bit watered down. So when that band came along, man, talk about timing. That was perfect timing to do something fresh and new. And bands, we took a little hit from that, but we didn't stop playing. We had to play, mid-sized venues, and
right.
Like we went on tour. I think brought the Bullet Boys and some other band, and we just played like 4,000 and 5,000 seaters, and even played clubs at times.
Sure.
So we might have been we didn't do anything different, but we might have been flying under the radar just a little bit through the 90s. Right. I talked to Rudolph Schenker, and he's like, Mark, it seems like we've been together forever, but he goes, we really didn't play in the 90s. He said, they didn't play a lot because it was, because of this new wave of music.
Sure.
So,
sure.
But I welcomed it. It didn't bother me a bit. We had such a good run, and we were still playing. So, it's not like we're country music. When you're in a country band, there is no music that's going to swim by and take you over.
So true.
You know what I mean?
That's very true.
It's like, but when you're in my situation, the new fad might happen. You just don't know when.
But here you are 40 years later, still touring, like we said at the start of this, right? Still playing shows. So you were able to survive.
Our fans are loyal. The fans are loyal. I think that's a lot of the reason is, nothing's going to swim by and make them hate us,
Right.
And I really noticed that with like Germany, Japan, they really stay loyal to the bands. Absolutely. And they might even like something new, but they don't, it doesn't make them hate this, you know what I mean?
Sure.
So I always love that loyalty, and our fans are real loyal, they're our music. We grew up with them. So the music, we all knew where we were when this song came out and that song came out. It actually have created memories. Just like with me, with my band, we are total fans. We know where we were when certain songs came out.
Right. Of course, without a doubt.
Knew what we were doing.
One of the things I find fascinating, I guess it was probably about 20 years ago at this point, that Jani Lane actually sang with you guys for a little bit as a touring vocalist. I'll call him. What was that like? Yeah, having him. Obviously, he was already famous with Warren, but what was that like, and what was he like as a person?
Um, yeah, well, we were having singers fill in, and he was on our management. Our manager managed Jani Lane.
Okay.
What I remember was he was completely prepared. I mean, he lived with the songs. We gave him a song list. He lived with the songs for 2 weeks before he even sang with us. His wife told us she was being tortured by Great White. I mean, it literally, our CDs were in cars at his house. It was just going, going, going. So he came in totally prepared. You know, he knew all the words. He didn't have any lyric sheets. He memorized every word, and he was stone cold sober for those 10 shows he did. And I actually worked with him a little bit with that. I
Did
sent
you?
him daily meditations.
Hmm.
We talked on the phone all the time. And yeah, so yeah, he was a total pro. I remember we played in Portugal, this really big show, and he was just awesome. He's a really good guy too, man.
Hmm.
Super nice guy.
Yeah, and you know what I've seen? I've never was able to see you guys together in person, but I've seen some of the YouTube videos of him doing "Save Your Love," and it was just to me it was phenomenal. I was blown away. I did not ever think that it would fit, you know, because his voice to me was Warren's, right, and it was different than Great
Right.
White. But you put the two
Yeah.
together, I'm like, wow, that really worked. It
Wasn't
really,
bad.
no,
Yeah, it wasn't bad at all.
right, right.
He yeah, he was really doing well too, man.
Mm, mm,
Yeah, I think he was actually super happy, and I didn't realize. Um, I thought he didn't want to do it forever, but when I look back and we got another singer. I think he might have been a little upset by that.
mm,
Perhaps. I can't be for sure on that,
sure.
but yeah,
Yeah. So you mentioned you were helping him, right? And you know, at this point, you're, I think it's like
yeah.
13, 14 years sober, right? So talk about that experience for you.
Um, well, I today I'm over 12 years, but
Nice.
back then, what year would that have been? Around 2010. So I was about 3 years sober, probably.
Okay.
But I was working with you know, people that wanted to get sober and stuff, and you know, I'd send out daily prayers to people and had a little group going online, and so we spoke a lot. And he told me, man, he goes, I want to be sober. People don't understand, but I want to be sober worse than anybody.
Mm,
And so we kind of identified his triggers and you know what makes him want to drink, and you know one of the things he told me was downtime drives me crazy.
mm,
He needs to be rolling all the time, you know. As long as he's busy, he does good. And his wife came out with him just as a support system, you know, when he did those shows with us. He was spot on. I remember we were sitting in an airport outside one morning, and it was like the most gorgeous day you've ever seen in your life. And he was sitting with his wife. And I said, dude, I go, the fans are online saying that you haven't sounded this good in 20 years. You look amazing. You're trim. Your wife's beautiful. What's wrong with this? You
sure.
know?
Hmm.
And he goes, nothing, man. He goes, this is wonderful. You know, so unfortunately, it was during downtime, his demons kind of overcame him.
Mm,
He didn't get a hold of me those days.
mm,
So he kind of disappeared and went off, and, you know, it's really unfortunate. I hate to lose people with addiction, and it's just it's one of the things, you know. Like I've learned that I don't take people's addictions or alcoholism or anything personally.
mhm,
You know, I've kind of had to learn that because I used to get real hurt.
mm,
You know, if somebody, you know, went off the deep end after they have a couple of years, you know. But now I'm kind of upset, but I'm not. You know, I don't take anybody's addiction personal.
mhm.
You know, but it's hard to not be affected, you know, when somebody doesn't do well, because it's so great to see somebody do well that wasn't doing good before, and they look like hell and everything.
Sure.
And then you see this transformation, and you're just like, God, I can't believe you're the same person.
Right.
It's just amazing to. I I'm almost like addicted to watching people get well. It's just amazing, and I've I've never been totally self-serving, but I think over the last few years I've even got away from myself even more, and um, kind of learned that you know being a more giving person, the the rewards from how you feel, it's totally amazing when
Mm,
you're not so self-serving. People that haven't done that don't understand it,
mm,
because, oh, I want to be a millionaire and this, that, and the other, me. But when you help people and see good things happen, the feeling you get from it is like, it's unbelievable. It's
sure.
like the greatest rush. And I don't know, it just makes you feel amazing, so I like being involved with
And,
all
and
that.
and I've seen online where you're actually trying to help people, not just musicians, but you try to help people wherever you can because you've lived both sides of this, right? Where, like you said
Yeah.
before, in the '90s, it was, hey, let's have 6 beers to kind of take the edge off. To now being
Yeah.
12, 13 years sober, 12 years sober. So you've lived both sides of that.
Yeah. I speak around. I just did this thing for people getting out of prison. They were going on parole and whatnot, and I just spoke at a Zoom meeting, and that was actually kind of neat because they're really getting involved, and they started rallying around. I told them one of the things I took from the program and people that I listened to and took direction from was this one day at a time stuff. I
Sure.
go, it's the most simple thing in the world, but when I wake up in the morning, I pray to God that He'll keep me sober today. And there's just something to say about just getting through today, because the time take care of itself. Well, these people that were going on parole, they started rallying around that. They're going one day at a time, man. And they're all, jumping in,
Sure,
going,
sure.
that's right. That's the way I live,
Um,
baby. And,
um,
and all this. And it was just great, So I've never worked with a big group like that. It was really the first. I've spoke at celebrating people's milestones at meetings
right,
for 45 minutes before, but I've never spoken to a group like that, so it was new for me. I
right,
really, really dug that. I really liked it, and they had nothing to do with being musicians or anything. They're from
right.
all walks of life. They did some criminal activity to feed
Mm,
their addictions, and so that was a special situation. It was actually a family member of mine, my uncle's daughter, my uncle's daughter's daughter
okay.
is a parole agent,
Oh,
and
wow.
she asked me if I would do that. So, yeah, and I'm going to do more of them. So
I
it's a
think
lot of
that's
fun.
awesome. You've given to the world not just some great music, but now you're also helping people, which in a lot of ways, as much as I love the music, that might be even more important than the music you've put out for 40 years. So that must be very rewarding.
I'm not the only one that does it either. Joe
Hmm.
Walsh is out there waving the sober flag. Paul McCartney. There's a lot of other musicians that have had addiction problems themselves,
Yep.
and instead of using their status to let everybody know how great they are, they get out and speak and try to help, and they can do it on a much bigger scale than I can. But yeah,
Well,
it's still great to be able to work with people.
that's awesome. Now, I don't know if you saw this week, your ex-singer, Terry Luce, had made mention that he was taken by surprise when he was let go in the band.
Um, yeah, there was just a few issues. I mean, when we got Mitch, it wasn't a planned thing. It
Mhm.
just that kind of happened generically. There were a few things that were happening. Um, nothing really big, but enough to uh, affect us a little bit. Things that Terry was doing, but like I said, nothing big. He was a wonderful guy. Um, but the Mitch thing kind of came along very unexpected. We met him by accident twice. Um, then I happened to see this Van Halen story, and I
Uh,
go, "That's the guy I've met a couple other times." Then somebody sent me a picture where you can just see me and him on stage, and I said, "That looks pretty good."
right.
And just a bunch of stuff happened, like somebody was trying to tell me something,
Right.
and so we we asked him if he'd be interested in jamming with us, and we sent him music. He said, "Yeah, sure, I'll jam with you guys." We sent him some music and stripped all the vocals off, and he put, his vocal on some of our iconic old songs
Oh wow.
and a couple new ones. And he goes, "I don't know if this is going to work or not." Neither did we.
Mhm.
I'd never heard of him before. I only heard one Van Halen song he sang, and then I come to find out he had this huge solo career and all this stuff. He'd
Right.
been on like Letterman and
Right. Mhm.
all this stuff. So, but he for me he flew under the radar mostly because I'm so busy on
Sure.
tour all those years, and so heard his voice, and anyway, so he sounded great on the stuff. So we flew him out and we jammed for 3 days, and before we knew it, we were playing shows.
Right.
So, but that happened. Uh, you know, Terry, I sent him messages, and then it got released on the internet
Mm.
before he read my message.
Oh wow.
So that's, I think, why he was shocked.
Okay.
But whether we would have found a singer or not at that time, we were going to let him know that we were going to look for someone else. The other thing is, I think he fit his band. His home base to me has always been XYZ.
Right.
I mean, he was with us a few years and he did
Mhm.
wonderful, but I kind of felt good about that. I go, now he can get that XYZ thing back together.
Right.
That's how the fans know him from
Sure.
that.
Sure.
So I think Mitch is a little bit better fit in a lot of ways, and
Yep.
so
Yep.
so there's never any ill will toward Terry.
Mhm.
I've always, in fact, I absolutely loved being around him. He was a really nice guy.
Mhm. No,
Just
that,
things happen. Your coworkers, don't always doesn't always turn out.
look, in my job, I don't speak to the people I worked with 20 years ago. That's just sometimes yours is just a lot more visible to everybody around the world. So,
Yeah,
that's one
yeah,
of the things to me I take away. And then, I'll wrap up and I'll let you go. But, um, you're always very complimentary, whether it's Terry, like you just said, even Jack, you've said like in the past, like you've only had like one or two arguments with Jack over the years, right? Jack Russell,
yeah,
and you've wished him nothing but the best. It's not to me like you hear all these other bands where they split
hmm
apart and they're fighting constantly all the time. It doesn't seem
yeah,
like that with Great White. It seems like it's just, for whatever reason, you guys move apart and go different directions.
yeah,
Yeah. Do you think
yeah.
you're
I yeah, we were just because we were really good friends, and it was really the addiction that took him out of the game.
mhm,
He could no longer perform, even I don't think close to even his standards,
right?
much less ours. He was really. I, we talked about it earlier, but I've dealt with so many different level of addicts. You
Sure.
know, some like one guy can get a DUI and like not ever drink again.
Right.
He's so upset by this DUI.
Hmm.
Then you got a guy that loses his house, job, wife, family, money. He had
Right.
nothing. He
Right.
lived in his car. You know, he's dead on Skid Row, and he still doesn't stop.
Yep. Yep.
So there's two different levels of addicts. Um, I wouldn't put Jack all the way to the end, but he definitely had his struggles. He had his demons. And like I said earlier, I'd never taken anybody's addiction personal.
Right.
It's just the very tough road. Um, you know, that I don't have any answers. I know that it took me a while to get comfortable in my own skin,
Sure.
sober, because it was always a vehicle for me to escape fear and escape just any kind of fear or not feeling comfortable in a certain situation. Couple beers and I'm fine. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So it was a vehicle for confidence almost.
Sure.
You know,
Sure.
so it, to just stop that, it's very difficult. You feel naked and you don't know what to do with yourself, and it's very difficult. So I had to work through all my fears and do a lot of work on my character defects. It was a lot more than just removing alcohol. It
Sure.
was a lot of self work, working with other people, and trying to get comfortable in my own skin.
Yeah.
And I don't know that Jack has, reached that or what he's up to. So
If if you
just
ever have,
because we're not working together, don't mean I don't have love for the guy.
of course,
And I want him to do good.
that's great to hear. You think if he ever did get himself all cleaned up and such, that you'd be open to working with him again, or do you just think that's the past and let the past be the past?
Yeah, I just can't envision that presenting itself. Um, and I I'm not sure he's ready. From what I've seen,
Hmm.
his performances and stuff. It sounds like his voice is kind of there, but I don't know, man. There's a lot of damage, and I'd rather just remember us together with him flying around on the stage and just blowing minds. That's the picture I want. It's like it's almost like when you lose a family member, you don't want to think about that. You want to think about all the great times and the wonderful times you had in you celebrate their life.
Sure.
In other words, I'd rather celebrate Jack in our heyday, you
Right.
know, keep that picture. And so
Nope. I think
I,
that's
I don't
well
know what
said.
else to say about that.
No, I think it's well said, and like you started off, we'll end here. The band is going to be out on the road starting next week. Performance shows
Yeah,
going through June, July, August across the United States. I know there's shows in New York, there's shows in
yeah.
California, and seems like everywhere in between. So, is there anything else going on that you want to make sure that the fans know about before we wrap up?
Yeah, just go to our website, officialgreatwhite.com, and there's constantly shows coming in, so you can just keep checking back and see when we're going to be in your area. And I'm always available. I'm never hidden from anybody, so you
For
can
sure.
see me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I'm not hard to find, so if you got any questions, I'll probably answer you.
Yep.
So yeah, that's about it, man.
Awesome. Well, I say on behalf of all the fans, Mark, thank you for the 40 almost years of memories now. We really appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Mike.
We look forward to seeing you guys on the road this year, and continued
Cool.
health and happiness and success for you.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it, man.
Yes, thank
Do a
you.
good
Take it
show.
easy.
Thanks for
Oh,
doing this.
thank you, Mark. I really appreciate it. I really do. And I appreciate all you've done for us. So thank you very much.
Awesome, buddy.
Take it
Take
easy.
care.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Alrighty, there you have it. I'd like to thank Mark for taking nearly an hour with me talking all about Great White, both the past as well as the future. I know I speak on behalf of all fans that we look forward to hearing some new music, hopefully in the months to come. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button below. If you're listening to one of my podcasts, subscribe over there as well. Also, head on over to Facebook and follow my page, The Rock Experience with Mike Brunn, where each and every day we talk about all the rock and roll music that you love. You could also follow me on Instagram and Twitter as well. That's it for this episode. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. See you all next time.